Now it is my honor to introduce our special speaker for today's opening ceremony. Lauryn Williams joins us today virtually from Washington, D.C. Let me pull up your bio. Lauryn is Senior Advisor for Strategy in the White House Office of the National Cyber Director and focuses on cybersecurity of space systems. She joined ONCD from the Department of Defense, where she served in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy and led DoD's efforts on leveraging commercial space capabilities and space industry outreach, as well as on responsible behaviors in space. Previously, she served in the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration, where she conducted extensive outreach to international partners on non-proliferation export controls, as well as at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Lauryn is a fellow Californian from Long Beach, California, and received her BA from Stanford University and Master's in Public and International Affairs from Princeton University. Welcome, Lauryn. We're thrilled to have you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Kayvan. It is really fun and really awesome to be here with you and the Cal Poly Cybersecurity Institute. And what I have learned is a group of 23 teams and 119 players from California and Utah and Oregon, so representing the West Coast. And so as Kayvan mentioned, it's really fun for me to be able to talk to you all, because I grew up in Long Beach, was just there last week or the week before, meeting with space companies, and went to middle school and high school in Long Beach and all through California schools. I was at Stanford, so I spent my entire education in California, and so always excited to come back and to have opportunities to connect with students even virtually here. So it's really fun to have this opportunity to chat with you all. And so I'll start by maybe just saying a little bit more about how I ended up working in space policy and now in cybersecurity issues and working on both of those, which I think you all are setting yourselves up very well to have a whole wealth of opportunities by choosing to spend your weekend on such a fun sort of space grand challenge that is very much an issue to our speaker from outer space, as he mentioned, visiting, being part of a conference where there was conversation about cybersecurity for satellites and how much of a kind of an open question this is. This is a really important issue area for the White House right now. And so I'll talk to you all about that a little bit as well. So what I will say is that I had no idea that I would be working on these sorts of issues when I left California, when I moved to Washington, D.C. to work at a think tank on nuclear security issues. That was my first introduction to working on national security, because I was very interested in those topics in college, and was in high school when President Obama was being elected, and was just really interested in learning more about what national security issues look like. And so I moved out to DC right after college with that sort of idea in mind, but I didn't know where it would lead me or what I would end up doing later. And so I very much followed working for good people. When I was in DC, I got a sense that I would have to get a master's degree. That was the path, kind of the way to work my way into government. And so I got a master's degree after I finished working at the National Security think tank, and after that opportunities opened to spend time working in different U.S. government departments and agencies. And so first found myself working at the Department of Energy on nuclear policy issues, working with international countries. And then I had an opportunity to move over to work in the Department of Defense. And it was a very interesting time, an important time in the context of space policy and thinking about how important space issues are to us today. And even just a couple of years ago, before 2019, we didn't have an important the newest service in the Department of Defense and the military, meaning the Space Force. And so that was a couple of years ago. There was a very important moment where there was growth of new space institutions, including the Space Force, including a new office in the Department of Defense, where I ended up working on space policy. And so when I was there, I just being an eager person who was willing to learn new issues, I was thrown right into space policy without having studied it specifically in middle school, high school, or in college, but just had an open mind and a willingness to work on kind of hard technical policy issues. And so that was how I got my start a few years ago, working on space policy issues, thinking about what it means to develop responsible behavior in space, thinking about challenges like debris in space and how much kind of space junk there is up there and what that means for the ability of satellites to maneuver around the satellites that allow us to do everything that's important to us here on Earth, to be in to have GPS that allows us to travel around, to enable our phone communications. All of those things we don't even think about, we take for granted. They're all enabled by satellites and by space services. So working at the Department of Defense was where I got first interested and introduced to all the important things that we do here on Earth that are enabled by space systems. And so when I had the opportunity less than a year ago to come over to the White House, and that brings me to where I work today in the Office of the National Cyber Director, which is the newest White House office, the first new office created in 30 years, actually. That when I walked in the door, there was an opportunity to take on the challenge, take on an important challenge today, which is thinking about cybersecurity for space systems. And so, why is the White House find that important, very interesting right now? Well, the first reason, or the most relevant reason today, which may not be a surprise to any of you, is that over a year ago, the very first sort of attack in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, following Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, was in the space context. There is a company, a U.S. company called Viasat, that was attacked by using cyber means before the start of that conflict, and that really changed how U.S. private space companies, and Viasat is a U.S. company, but it was operating in Europe, and that attack had spillover effects throughout Europe, and so it was really a sort of international context from the start. And so that really changed how space companies started to think about the importance of securing their systems from cyber attacks, and from the US government perspective, because there are so many services that we rely on, and so many ways in which the government, the Department of Defense and NASA, kind of your key organizations that own and operate space systems, we know how important those systems are to us. And so therefore, seeing an attack in real life, and a cyber attack in real life that affected a space company, really created some urgency. And so the White House is very focused on that issue. And so about 6 weeks ago, our office, along with the National Space Council, held an important event at the White House, which was kind of based on buildup of over maybe 6 months, I'd say, of work, kind of quiet work, understanding the different perspectives that the private sector and that government has related to tackling the challenge of cybersecurity for space systems. We held a big event at the White House to bring together senior leaders, CEOs and presidents from across a bunch of private sector companies, unsurprisingly, which many are based in California, because there's such an exciting landscape of space companies that are based in Southern California and Northern California. There's a space hub of activity around Vandenberg Space Force Base. So all up and down California, there's a lot of activity and a lot of innovation. And so several of those companies based in California came out to the White House, and we had an important conversation with them that was both at the focused on sharing threat information with them, but also thinking about kind of a positive vision and a positive way to move forward and to collaborate across government and across the private sector, because we really very much understand and appreciate at the White House that we can't tackle this issue just as government alone. We really have to partner with space companies that are on the cutting edge of innovation. And so I am personally really excited about this work. It is also very much tied to the new national cybersecurity strategy that President Biden released for the administration on March 2nd, which outlines an affirmative and positive vision for our country to make cyberspace more defensible and resilient and aligned with US values. And that goal, of course, applies across all elements of the US economy, but we very much see it as applying to the space domain. And so I'm excited about this work because we not only chose to hold a senior level event at the White House to bring together kind of the head honchos of space industry and government leadership at the White House, but we also said that's all fine and good, but we also need to move forward and have conversations at the more technical kind of working level to understand the perspectives of private sector companies, to hear the challenges that they're facing when it comes to understanding what it means to apply cybersecurity principles and best practices across the space industry. And so we have started out in the last few weeks holding a series of workshops in different parts of the country. We as the White House are going out to industry rather than bringing them to us, and really taking a listening kind of posture. And so just at the end of April, I was back in California for the RSA Cybersecurity Conference, and also to host a workshop, our first workshop, at the listening to technical experts from space companies out at NASA JPL in Pasadena, which is a really exciting place if you haven't had a chance to visit. I think they offer tours every once in a while. Just a really exciting place and hub of activity and opportunities for all of us who either are from California or can get there every once in a while. And so my colleague and I held our first workshop there, and we will hold others in other parts of the country, of which there are many that are hubs for space industry. So those include Colorado, a lot of activity there, in Florida, no surprise, in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as in Texas. So we want to get a representative understanding of what's going on across the country and bring that information back to the White House so that we are making sure that we're incorporating the perspectives of the private sector into what we do. So that's kind of a deep dive into how we are thinking about space and cybersecurity at the White House today. And I also want to close by focusing on why the cyber workforce and investing in STEM education and STEM jobs is also really important to us. And I would say this is also why I'd argue you have picked a great area to learn about through this grand challenge, because there is no lack of opportunity for opportunities for jobs and for exciting internships and future paths if you stick with this really interesting area. And cybersecurity is so broad, it doesn't even have to just be in the space context. So the White House is now, we're working on a national cybersecurity education and workforce strategy. And one of the key details there, and key driving forces behind it, is that there are several hundred thousands of jobs that are open right now. They're not filled for people with cybersecurity skills, or skills that can be applied to cyber challenges. And many of those jobs don't even require a 4-year degree. They require skills and capacity and an eagerness to learn. But the promise for pay and the benefits to support the lifestyle that we all want are available in that number of jobs that are unfilled. And so our office is very much focused on developing out that strategy and preparing a future workforce that is able to fill those jobs that are available now, by making sure that there are opportunities to gain the skills needed to thrive in the cyber workforce. So that's another important area that our office is focused on, and is very much focused as well on making sure that principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion and access are also a key part of the way that we're thinking about expanding opportunities and providing opportunities for jobs and employment in the cyberspace. So I really will close by saying that I know that you have a great opportunity in front of you this weekend, and I hope that this experience will only enhance and increase your interest in learning more about the importance of space and of making sure that space systems are secure from cyber threats to everything that we do in our daily lives here on Earth. There's no shortage of exciting challenges, of exciting opportunities, and ways to grow by taking the experience that you'll have this weekend and the curiosity and the questions that you'll have and leaning into those as you continue in your middle school and high school educations. And because the services that space systems provide are so important to everything that we do here on Earth. And so I wish you all best of luck and a great experience in starting on this challenge that this California Cybersecurity Institute has prepared for you. And you never know, it may just lead you on a path to the White House one day or ever anywhere else that you can see yourself going forward. So I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.